you ever wonder how the biggest stars in the game got to where they are? I'm talking about the type of superstardom that rewrites history, shifts pop culture, and builds empires. Now imagine someone who had that kind of glow, that kind of voice, that kind of magic, and still ended up watching others run with the blueprint she created. That someone? Mariah Carey. And baby, the story behind it might just be one of the messiest unsolved chapters in music industry history. Let's go back to the 90s. Mariah Carey wasn't just a singer, she was a force. She wrote her own hits, produced her albums, and had a 5-octave range that could shut the whole room up. Radio, MTV, Grammys, Mariah was everywhere. The thing is, she wasn't just talented. She had control. She knew her power. And that's where things start to get real complicated because the industry, especially back then, didn't like a woman, especially a woman of color, having that kind of autonomy, especially when she was outshining the men running the show. And one of those men, Tommy Mottola, her ex-husband, also the head of Sony Music, the same label she was signed to. You see the problem? That wasn't a relationship, it was a trap. And when Mariah finally said enough is enough, it didn't just end in heartbreak. It started a war. And the way people tell it, that war included sabotaging her career, pulling strings behind the scenes, and placing new stars into positions that should have been hers. Enter Beyonce and Jennifer Lopez. Now hold up, I'm not saying these women had a master plan to destroy Mariah, but the industry, the machine, it knew exactly what it was doing. Mariah had just left Sony. She was about to release the movie Glitter and its soundtrack. She was trying to shine solo, finally free, and then boom, J-Lo comes out with a song using the exact same sample Mariah had locked in first. That's not a coincidence, that's surgical. Mariah had secured the sample for her lead single, Loverboy. She recorded it, it was ready. And then suddenly, Jennifer's version, on the same label, drops before Mariah's even hits shelves. And guess who made that happen? Tommy! But that was just the beginning. The deeper mess starts when you realize J-Lo wasn't even known as a singer back then. She was a dancer on In Living Color who'd been hustling her way into acting. And yet, all of a sudden, she's got hit singles, major albums, and top-tier producers lining up to hand her songs. Songs that were either already recorded by other artists or secretly written by people like Ashanti. The vocals, many of them weren't even hers. Ashanti, for example, had her voice all over J-Lo's songs. Background vocals, hooks, even ad-libs. But J-Lo got the credit, the awards, the spotlight. Now add Beyonce to the equation. In the early 2000s, BA was on the rise. Destiny's Child was everywhere. Her solo career was just beginning to form. And she never shied away from praising Mariah. She called Vision of Love one of the first songs that inspired her, said she studied Mariah's runs and built her own vocal style from them. BA used to fan out over Mariah, and there are our receipts. But somewhere along the way, that admiration disappeared completely. Some folks say Beyonce intentionally distanced herself once her own stardom started growing, that getting too close to Mariah's diva image didn't fit the carefully curated legend Beyonce was building. And here's where things really get murky, because as Beyonce rose higher, Mariah seemed to get pushed further into the shadows. Beyonce's ascent wasn't just talent and timing, it was calculated. Her image, her music, her business moves, they were polished to perfection. Every step forward was about legacy, about building something that could rival the likes of Michael Jackson or Prince, and in that pursuit, anything or anyone that didn't fit the narrative had to be kept at a distance. Mariah Carey, as iconic as she was, didn't fit that vision. She was too raw, too emotional, too unpredictable. She had her own orbit. And for someone like Beyonce, who was carefully crafting a spotless empire, that kind of energy was a risk. Now let's be clear, nobody's denying Beyonce's work ethic or genius. But the way the industry favored her, that wasn't just organic. Her rise aligned with a moment when the machine needed a new queen, a fresh face who could dominate without rocking the boat too much. And with the backing of Jay-Z, who had serious influence in both music and business circles, doors flew open that didn't even exist for Mariah. It wasn't just talent meeting opportunity. It was power making space for power. Meanwhile, Mariah was still out here trying to create. She was battling tabloid narratives, mental health rumors, and industry execs who wanted her silenced. And while all that noise was going on, J-Lo was stacking accolades, magazine covers, movie deals, fashion collabs. But nobody wanted to ask the uncomfortable question, why was someone with limited vocal range being given songs meant for vocal powerhouses? Why was her career being fast-tracked while other singers with stronger talent were sidelined? Then came the infamous "I don't know her" moment. When Mariah was asked about J-Lo in an interview and responded with those now iconic words, it wasn't shade. It was truth wrapped in shade. She genuinely didn't know her. Not as a peer, not as a fellow singer, not as someone worthy of being in the same lane. And fans took that moment and ran with it. It became the unofficial slogan for all the drama that had been bubbling underneath. The truth is, a lot of people already knew what was happening. Producers, songwriters, even other artists had stories. Stories about tracks being rerouted, about vocals being borrowed, about credit not being given where it was due. Ashanti, for example, spoke up years later about how frustrating it was to hear her own voice on someone else's hit. She wrote songs, sang hooks, and then watched J-Lo perform them like they were hers. And what could she do? The label made the rules. She played along to survive, and it wasn't just Ashanti. Rumors swirled about other Black artists whose work was lifted or whitewashed so someone more marketable could benefit. The industry has a long, ugly history of that kind of theft. And J-Lo? She played the game like a pro. Whether she knew the full extent of the sabotage or not, she benefited from it. She accepted the spotlight, she let people believe those vocals were hers, and she never once paused to acknowledge the women, especially Black women, who laid the foundation she walked on. Now, with time and perspective, the pieces are starting to connect. Fans are revisiting old interviews, reading between the lines, and seeing patterns they missed the first time. The glitter, the glamour, the back-to-back chart success, it all came at a cost. And for Mariah, that cost wasn't just missed opportunities. It was years of watching her own legacy be repackaged, redistributed, and diluted by an industry that decided she was too difficult to control. Mariah Carey never needed a cosign to prove her worth. Her voice did that on its own. From the church-rooted falsettos to the vocal gymnastics that nobody could touch, she stood alone. But that didn't stop the powers that be from trying to replace her. They couldn't recreate her talent, so they tried to bury it by promoting safer, more controllable alternatives, and when that didn't work, they started taking pieces of her playbook and handing them out to others like party favors. It's not just about one stolen song or one shady executive. It's about a long pattern of erasure. Mariah would drop a hit, and months later, you'd see someone else with a remix version or a watered-down duplicate dressed up as innovation. And while Mariah was battling depression, industry politics, and personal sabotage, those other artists were sailing on industry personage yachts, being pushed as icons, but behind closed doors, they knew whose shoulders they were standing on. And then there's the whisper that Mariah might finally be ready to talk. Not just hint or throw light shade, but actually speak directly and openly about what happened. The rumors, the sabotage, the calculated moves that were designed to push her out of the spotlight and install new royalty. Whether it's a documentary, a memoir sequel, or a bold sit-down interview, people close to her say something's coming. And this time, she's not holding back, because there's still so much we don't know. Did Beyonce actively pull away because she no longer wanted to be associated with Mariah's perceived meltdown era? Or was it her team calling the shots, molding her image to be above the mess? Did J-Lo really believe she earned every plaque and award? Or did she know the game was rigged in her favor? These questions linger like smoke in a room no one wants to air out. Mariah has hinted before. She's said the words industry sabotage, mentioned powerful hands that tried to silence her, and spoken on being painted as unstable while others took her work and ran with it. And when you line up the timeline, it's all there. The label shakeups, the overlapping samples, the sudden replacement of Mariah's sound on mainstream radio with safer alternatives. It wasn't about lack of talent, it was about strategy and about making room by quietly forcing someone out. Fans aren't stupid. They remember when Mariah was dominating Christmas charts and Billboard Hot 100s at the same time. They remember how her name started disappearing from the major award shows even as her music continued selling. They saw the industry start rewriting history in real time, placing new faces at the top and calling them pioneers, while acting like the woman who invented the lane didn't exist anymore. But the thing about Mariah, she's still here. She's still charting, still singing, still being referenced by the same artists who once tried to edge her out. You can't erase greatness. You can try to bury it under PR machines and viral moments, but real artistry never dies. So if Mariah really is about to speak, it's not just tea, it's a cultural moment. Because it's not only her story. It's the story of every Black or biracial woman who built something original and then watched the industry steal it, dilute it, and give it to someone with lighter skin, fewer demands, and less talent. Mariah's legacy was never just about music. It was about owning her space in an industry that wanted her silent. And now, she might just be ready to remind the world exactly who she is.